You're watching CN2 News. Two Chester County principals wanted to make a difference during the pandemic. They started Create and Educate LLC to help educators and parents during some tough times. They're focusing on literacy and leadership. CN2's R.E.A.L.L. Jackson has more on how they're helping the community.
Create and Educate, we are a consulting firm that works with educators as well as entrepreneurs. So with the side where we're working with educators, we offer professional development on literacy as well as implicit bias. We work with leaders and leadership teams to help improve schools.
They've been surviving pandemic education by offering tips for school leaders, teachers, and parents.
We really want to see kids through the trajectory, graduating from high school, ready to go to college or to start a career or to go into the military.
Create and Educate has multiple community partners in the area that read books to children weekly, discuss literature, and express their support for the education system. Recently, the owners were featured for Amazon's #1 best-selling book entitled Women Who Lead in Education.
And so we are super, super excited because we're amongst a family of women leaders who are absolutely extraordinary. So it's an honor to have been asked to participate. And then even more of an honor now that the book has gone on sale and it became a #1 bestseller. So you don't have to be a school leader to have leadership qualities.
Collectively, both Tammy Taylor, principal of Great Falls Elementary, and Dr. Sheka Houston, principal of Chester Middle School, have 40 years of service in education. They have learned the need in their community, and they plan to
serve all children in all communities. And one of the things that we enlighten people about in our professional development with literacy is that sometimes it's hard for children to connect to text because they don't see themselves in text. Providing that culturally relevant literature for students, and that's not just African American students, that's all students. Every student at every school should be able to see themselves in a book, in a text, to be able to connect with it.
Surviving pandemic education together in Chester, R.E.A.L.L. Jackson, CN2 News.
Great Saturday, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Good morning, Tammy.
Good morning, Sheka. Happy Saturday, everybody.
Happy Saturday. And we are pre-recording this. I have an event today at Union Baptist Church in R.E.A.L.L. I'm one of the speakers for their Black History program. So please share this out. And if you're able to join us over there at 9 o'clock, that will be going on Saturday at 9 o'clock. Principal Hurt didn't come on before us because he is in professional development in North Carolina this morning, and he's going to be finishing his broadcast on Sunday for the next 3 Saturdays at 6:30. So you can join him then. But we are continuing our discussion, and welcome to the R.E.A.L. Academy. We have based the R.E.A.L. Academy off our acronym that we developed in order to improve our schools. 2 report card grade levels in 1 year at my school and 3 report card grade levels in 1 year at Tammy's school. And that acronym stands for respect, excellence, accountability, literacy, and leadership. And those are the things that we have found based on the tenets from Ron Edmonds' school improvement strategies that we were able to use to make sure that we had the right things in place to improve our schools. So today we're going to be talking about another program that we have, the Knowledge Academy for girls and boys. And what we're using is the framework, Africana Womanist framework, as well as the Africana Man framework developed by Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems. So we left off from last week going over the male accountability tenets, and we're picking up today on number 8, humility and arrogance. And we're explaining how what she has described as things that are male and female compatibility tenets we're going to be relating them to how we could use them in the school for children to relate to one another in a culturally relevant SEL program. So you want to get us started, Tammy?
Sure. We last week talked, of course, about mutual respect and disrespect and support and neglect. These are followed with humility and arrogance. And as Sheka was saying, the tenets are named as relationship, positive, negative tenets in order for the strengthening of the male female relationship. But it is the same for having those relationships in other settings. As she said, for instance, in a classroom, we have to know how to come humbly to every situation so that we don't come off as arrogant or all knowing or inflexible, because when you have humility and you are coming from a place that's genuine, then people trust and respect the fact that that is who you are.
Exactly. And the next tenet is enjoyment versus being mean spirited.
Yeah, and it's the same. Like when you are with people, your significant other or students in the classroom or your staff, like you want to have experiences that are enjoyable, and you want to approach situations with joy and happiness, good energy. You don't want to be known as or viewed as mean spirited, because you're always hostile, you're always perceived to be negative because you are never on board with what's going on. So that comes in the form of allowing your joy to be full and demonstrating that in the interactions that you have with others.
And in schools, as leaders, we set the tone for that in our schools, making sure that it's a place where people want to come to work and enjoy. And then the same things with teachers in their classrooms, making sure that the culture is built in the classroom to where it is something that the children enjoy, and that you're teaching them not to be mean spirited towards one another, but teaching them how to celebrate one another. The next one, number 10, is compassion and callousness.
And before we go into just discussing at length the compassion and callousness, I just want to echo something that Sheka just said, because today, especially, we have to be very vigilant about watching the interactions that kids have with one another, because it's a new generation of meanness that can happen. And kids are ostracized and isolated for things that you wouldn't even imagine, that don't even make sense to sometimes us as adults. But just be mindful that we want to teach our kids to come to the center of themselves with happiness and joy, rather than treating each other with an ill intent or malintent, or just that evilness that makes things so mean. And moving on to compassion and callousness, that's just making sure that we teach our children and we interact with one another as adults with compassion and empathy, recognizing that we're human, and allowing everyone to understand that that human component and that human aspect of who we are and what we do is what makes our profession what it is. I mean, our capital is human. And what you never want is to seem insensitive or callous. And, that's why right now, especially, we have to promote self-care and encourage people to take care of themselves and to take care of each other, because that is a very important aspect of being in any type of relationship.
Definitely. And, we always tell students, and we use it as a rule of thumb ourselves. You treat people how you want to be treated. So,
Absolutely.
if you're following that, you should definitely stay out of the callousness realm. The next 11th tenet is sharing and caring versus being selfish and having egotism.
I think that sort of says what it needs to say. Like,
Mhm.
you have to be willing to share and show that you care.
Mhm.
If you ever approach any situation, I don't care what kind of relationship it is with your spouse, if with your friends, if it's with your family, your school family, if you come off as everything is always about you,
Mm.
you eventually are going to end up by yourself.
Mhm. Definitely. Number 12 is complementary versus negative criticism. And this is something that, I know we're talking about male and female compatibility, but also with my own children at home. You have to teach children how to compliment one another. And sometimes the best way to see that and to do that is by modeling it. So, you're also able to do that in classrooms. I used to do shout outs with my staff through a newsletter, and in hopes that it would transfer to their classroom where they're complimenting students, and then students learn how to compliment one another.
Yes, and the important thing, like Shika said, is making sure that that's a natural part of what we do, and being sincere when you are complimenting, because people can see and spot, smell disingenuousness, like, and people don't appreciate that. So you're not doing this to be placating, but you're really truly finding a good thing and giving a compliment, because that's the culture that you want to breed, not one of negative criticism. And notice it says negative criticism, because constructive criticism is good in
Mhm.
a relationship. Now, you don't always want to be critical of what's going on. You want to have a balance there, but I
Mhm.
personally like to be constructively evaluated. Like, if when you give me feedback on something, I take that to heart, and it's
Mhm.
very personal for me. So I just think that it's unique that she chose to emphasize negative criticism over constructive criticism.
You're right, Tammy. I like to see constructive criticism as well. And one thing that I caution administrators that I might be training or working with or mentoring, when you do go in to provide people with constructive criticism, you do have to have some things in the tank with them first. So you should have prefaced that with some glows and some compliments, and some conversations before you just go in and start saying that, oh, well, you need to do this, this, and this. You do need to have a balance with that and make sure that first we have some things in the tank with that person before we start making withdrawals.
For sure, and make sure that the person can receive it from you, because if you
Hmm.
don't have that bank of deposits that you've placed into people, sometimes you get
Right, exactly. And number 13 is security and insecurity.
again, very important. And this one, I want to just kind of say again, it kind of speaks for itself. And security in a relationship is going to look very similar in other relationships. So just think about it this way: like, you don't have to be insecure, because when you are, it makes it very awkward for you to walk in a very um genuine relationship with someone, or
Mhm.
your interactions become stifled because you're suspicious and
Mhm.
you're not, I guess trusting would be a word that we could equate here with being secure in what you have going on. You trust that the person knows what to do. You trust that their best interest is at heart. And one of the things that I will say this to us as leaders, the thing that I think is super important as a leader is to never feel insecure with the assistant who is walking alongside you. That is the reason you hear every week that Principal Kafele is pouring into assistant principals and saying, hey, here's the walk. These are the things that you need to do. The reason that it's important for us as leaders to never get insecure in those positions is because it's our job to cultivate them and to develop them and never be the hoarder of the things that like you are sharing that and building them their capacity for when it's their time to lead, not worrying about because I hope that my assistant principal, when she takes on a principalship, will be 100 times better principal than I was, because again, that speaks to the legacy that I can have had by making sure that she was ready to do that.
Exactly. And when you go back to Dr. Hudson Weems making this a male and female compatibility tenets, security in relationships usually is really high up on the list for women. And sometimes people mistake that as being, oh, all women care about is money. But security means, yes, securing your finances, but also mainly that you're safe. Women need to feel safe in every aspect. And so when
And
we're
trust
talking,
that your counterpart has that under control.
yes, and when children are in the classrooms and teachers are at school, they want to feel safe as well. It would baffle me how, when children didn't feel safe, they would come to Miss Houston, this person doesn't have good classroom management. I don't feel safe. Yes, baby, I'm coming and we're going to get that corrected. Because if a child can come and verbalize that to you, something is very wrong. So that security, that safety is an essential thing for relationships to be successful. Number 14 is interdependence and dependence.
And this is just that whole dynamic, the whole concept of being in a strong and effective team, relationship, anything, is the interdependence. We are counting on one another. I'm not just depending on you. You're not just depending on me, but we recognize that we are a part of the whole that makes us a couple, or makes us a class, or makes us a leadership team, whatever it is. We recognize that we operate interdependently versus I have to carry that whole load by myself.
And the last one is spirituality versus non-spirituality. And we know that there's a separation of church and state in schools, but that's actually one of the things that I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. Although we have this separation of church and state as a believer, one of the things that I can ask my students is, well, do you go to church? Because that way I know if they have a background in any type of spirituality or any type of spiritual connection to something, to where they may have heard something at church that I can direct them back to, if it's going to help them in that particular situation. But of course, in relationships, when the Bible talks about being equally yoked, for things to be centered, you definitely have to have that equitability in your spirituality.
Definitely. And like Sheka said, it makes things so much easier if we're walking in the same direction. And the whole thing with the separation of church and state, I think that that's designed for the world, is set up as a worldly concept, because I believe that even though there is a separation in the law, my walk is what witnesses to the people around me, my staff. I mean, if they see who I am, if they can observe what I do when I'm under pressure, what does my decision making look like? Do I lose my cool and go nuts when the pressure is on? Like, I think that kind of is very evident in the way that we walk, the way that we lead. And even though the world thinks that we've separated the church from the state, the witness is in us. So there is a very distinctive way of looking at me and who I am and what I represent and who I represent.
Most definitely. And so that concludes the male compatibility
We
tenets.
finished it, yes.
And according to Dr. Hudson Weems, these tenets are the way to achieve strong, healthy male and female relationships. And we've also related it to a school and a classroom as well.
Yes.
So the next part of her framework is in concert with males in liberation struggle, which is characteristic 12. Did you want to get
And
into that one?
yeah, we can do that and then stop, I guess, because we need to get out of the way of Principal Kafele.
Okay.
Or can you set it 5 minutes like ahead since Principal Hurt's not on?
I could.
Yeah. So if we can go on and do this one and then we'll stop.
Okay.
But the whole point of this is we are not in competition with the men in our world. Black women are not fighting against Black men. We're fighting alongside Black men because we're all in the liberation struggle together from the oppressive nature of what sometimes that dominant culture forces upon us. We are not in competition with them. We are in the struggle together. And being in concert is that attempt at developing the strong relationships with like-minded men in this struggle for all people, for all Africana people.
And one of the things that we must do as a people and in concert with one another, we can't use platforms like social media when things happen to publicly tear each other down, or the salon or barbershop conversations. I specifically make sure that I do not run down Black men, because Black men, my father's a Black man, my brothers are Black men, my husband is a Black man. And so if I'm running down Black men, what does that say about me? I'm running myself down. Because if we're in concert with one another and we're in a struggle to one another, that is counterproductive to what we're doing. So
Absolutely. That's the main thing. We don't want to be
right.
counterproductive. And if we were naming Black men as the enemy, that's exactly what we would be, counterproductive. And you're right. Like, we have Black men, cousins, uncles, like they are who we are. So that makes no sense. And even though it does happen. Now we have to be for real about that. And we cry them down sometimes, and we say that there aren't any good ones left, and that there are lots of things that are said sometimes that we really just have to be mindful of, and instead of tearing them down, build them up.
Right. And I think we have to be intentional about that. When the incident happened with Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, you saw a lot of that, Black men saying this about Black women, or Black women saying this about Black men. Those types of things just don't help situations like that or situations overall. we have to learn how to express ourselves differently in order to make sure that we're being in concert with one another. There's a way to go about that, and it's not tearing each other down.
That's right. And even though we're all entitled to have an opinion about everything that you want one on, it isn't always necessary to talk about it and to speak
Exactly.
on it. Because
Mhm.
I mean, the Bible lets us know that it's not always expedient to speak.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just have to be quiet and pray.
Exactly. Well, we are at our time. So please join Principal Kafele. He has a great guest that he's going to have joining him. I believe it's Eric Cork that he's going to be talking about his writing program and how he specializes in writing. So join him next. And also on Sunday, Principal Hurt will be on at 6:30, and then Unlock the Middle with Josh and Dean are on at 7. So thank you all for joining us, and we will finish up. We'll probably have to take maybe 2 more Saturdays, you think, Tammy, to finish these
Maybe
up.
so. We may be able to finish next week, but
Okay.
possibly one more.
Well, have a great Saturday, everyone.
Yes, guys. And if you're around, make sure you come and hear Sheka. I'm excited to hear.
I am excited. Thank you.